Welcome to Hot Topics in International Trade, brought to you by Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group. Hi, this is Bob Brewer with Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group. Welcome to the podcast. I am here today with the newest member of the Brewer Consulting Group team, Mr. Robert Stein. All right, Robert, our VP now, Brewer Consulting Group. Welcome to the team.
Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate it very much. Glad to be here.
And this man is a wealth of information in international trade. Been with Mohawk for years. We've worked with Mohawk for, over a decade with Robert. We'll continue to. But I tell you what, I'm excited about this myself. Being able to tap into your brain, even for various podcasts, including today. We went around a little. Robert, what do you want to talk about first? And I'll tell you what, this FTZ thing, this is a big one, and I just wanted to kind of tap into your thoughts. For me, this thing, I'm going to put a spot here, everybody, at the end of this that I did on FTZs, and this goes back to like the 1930s, 1934, when this first originated. And over the decades, each administration has kind of improved upon that. But, I want to hear from Robert is where do we stand today talking about the various aspects that are beneficial to someone getting involved with an FTZ?
Yeah, foreign trade zone has been a hot topic, right?
Yeah.
People like to hear about it because the reality is people like to save money, and the foreign trade zone program is a great opportunity to help companies save money. And also, the focus of the program originally was to promote U.S. jobs and also to promote U.S. exports. So there's all sorts of valuable benefits to the program, but to a company, they're looking at it and saying, wow, this is an opportunity. Look at all these tariffs that we pay now, right? Look at the changes in the way people have to provide information for import. And the FTZ program provides additional benefits in these challenging times of additional tariffs and additional requirements that really companies should be looking at more closely.
Yeah, the way I look at it too, we've gotten involved with this at various levels with various countries when they're saying, we've just noticed that this is something we haven't been taking advantage of. And we look at the operations overall as to what they're doing and say, it's a good fit for you. Talk about it from the administrative aspect for a moment.
Yeah, well, people get excited about saving money, and then their excitement is tempered with, we're going to have to do a lot of things differently, or we're going to have to take on additional administrative burden. And the reality is that's not really a true statement. It's certainly not something where there's no administrative burden, but an FTZ for a lot of companies, especially one that has a simple warehousing and distribution zone, a lot of times a quarter to a half of a full-time employee to run it. And in terms of your business process doesn't really change. But what I'll say is, as someone who helps companies set up FTZs, it very often improves your business process. Things that you should have been thinking about, like better inventory control and really taking advantage of making sure that your work order process is efficient and appropriate. And these are things without foreign trade zone that companies kind of slide by and don't really address. And suddenly they're a foreign trade zone because it'll save them a lot of money. And they're like, wow, our business process really needs to be tightened up. And foreign trade zone made that happen.
Yep. Well, I think people look at it from, it's challenging, but what do you come across with challenges with an FTZ? What can you tell them in advance?
The biggest challenge that we see with people setting up foreign trade zone is really within their own companies, right? Everybody gets excited. Ooh, lots of money to save. There's an opportunity. Right. And then you have to lay down the path to get there. And sometimes the people who need to participate, people in the IT department, people in the warehouse, shipping and receiving, these people aren't necessarily directly invested in the process. They're indirectly, right? And IT has a lot of things they have to focus on to keep the lights on and keep the revenue flowing. And so this is like a big expenditure of resource that doesn't necessarily lead immediately to revenue for them. So sometimes you have to sit down and make sure you have the right people in the room.
Okay.
Have the CFO in the room, have the head of IT in the room, and the warehousing people as well, to make sure they understand that this has broad implications to the business and can be beneficial. And even though it's not keeping the lights on, the savings can be really incredible. And we've had situations where we've started a project and the CFO comes to us after like a year, like, where's my savings? and the, the IT department has foot dragged. Well, we're standing up SAP, and we have this new program that we're doing for production and blah blah blah. And there's all these competing agendas. And you really have to make sure when you start the process that all the right people are bought in. And that's kind of the value of the FTZ consultant, right? Is we're kind of the quarterback, right, of the whole thing to make sure we have the right players on the field.
Yep. And there's a little confusion. Wait a minute, you said I wasn't going to have to pay the tariff until it was exported out of the actual FTZ. How does this actually work with the tariffs when you bring it in?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and a lot of companies are struggling to understand, like, how do I avoid or mitigate the effects of these tariffs, especially these big ones, right? These Section 301, so-called Trump tariffs, and also anti-dumping and countervailing duty. And the zone can definitely help even in those cases, especially if you do a lot of exporting. So the way the foreign trade zone works, again, in summary, is that the zone is an area outside the commerce of the U.S. So as goods are admitted into the zone, you don't have to pay any of those duties or tariffs. And if you can successfully export out of the zone without entering the commerce of the U.S., so moving those goods inbound to the port of export and then out, you avoid paying any of those duties. So a lot of people say, I filed duty drawback, I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, but if you're filing duty drawback, you can't draw back anti-dumping and countervailing duties. But you can avoid them if you export them from a zone without entering the commerce of the U.S. So there are some unique advantages to foreign trade zone that even people who file duty drawback don't realize they can maximize their savings by using the zone.
Huh. Well, give me some pointers then. I mean, if I'm on the fence even with this to help make this successful.
I think the first thing that you have to look at is what are my savings, right? You have to have some measurement of the possible success of an FTZ program in your environment. And the first thing you should do is use a tool like an FTZ calculator, which we have available, and they're available online. I mean, it's a pretty common tool. And the idea is to plug in some basic numbers. What's your volume of imports? How much duty do you pay? How much do you export? How much do you destroy or scrap out? Do you do production? So how many inventory turns per year? These are all factors that determine your savings in the zone program. And then if that's not a refined enough look at the savings, you can do a feasibility study. So we do that. Like we offer a feasibility study where we come in and do a more comprehensive and detailed look, not just a simple calculator, but we actually dig into your accounting to look at exactly what those savings would be. And we capture that in a report that we can show you and say, here's the business case for a foreign trade zone. Once you have established the business case, either with a calculator or a feasibility study, then it's easy to take it to the people within your organization and say, look, here's the money. It's $100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year that we're simply leaving on the table. Or look at this cash flow improvement we could get by delaying the payment of duties in the zone. Look how much of our credit line we could free up. So these are all important discussions you can have once you can determine what the scope of the savings will be.
How many years have you been doing this, Robert, on the FTZ thing? I'm curious.
That's a great question because I was thinking about that before we did this podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, how long have I been doing this? And I started about 10 years ago.
All right.
And some people who've been in the foreign trade zone world for a long time may know the name of Karen Sager, who was a really great consultant. And she happened to be geographically close to where I lived and worked. And unfortunately, due to health concerns, she passed away. Oh. And she was very hard to replace, but there was this void. And so there was an opportunity to really sort of get involved and learn about it. While she was around, she was a great coach and mentor and someone who had great knowledge and really excited me about the Foreign Trade Zone program and the potential to save companies money and to keep American jobs here.
So you've been a little over a decade then you've been involved. So you've really seen the transformation of how this, I would say, has improved over the last 10 years on behalf of somebody wanting to get involved, correct?
There's been improvements, but the big issue has been the change in the overall climate of commerce, international trade, right? We didn't have the Section 301 tariffs 10 years ago. We didn't have the multiplication of all these anti-dumping and countervailing cases. We didn't have the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act, right? Which is another big thing that's going on that affects companies. Now, there are some complications. Originally Customs promised that the FTZ could be a place you could put UFLPA goods while they awaited disposition. Then they reversed course, and the NAFTZ, or National Association of Foreign Trade Zones, is busy trying to work on that to see if foreign trade zones can be a resource for UFLPA goods that are awaiting disposition. But that's pending.
Well, last question. You expand upon that. I want to hear, if you've got one off the top of your head, a real world example of where you've actually brought a client into the FTZ and shown them how this can work.
Absolutely. There's no better way to convince people than to give an example of real world savings. So we went into a company and they were making a product, their F-type connectors for cable, TV and coaxial cable. And the finished connectors, if you import them, are duty free. But if you import the components to make the connectors, it's 3.5% duty. So what we were able to do when the zone was first set up is look at, well, how much are you paying for those components? And they were paying $1.2 million in duties on just the 3.5% of the components. And the disadvantage was foreign companies were importing these goods duty-free when they were finished. And they were like, man, we're getting killed. And they were actually, examining what their options were to deal with this threat. So they came to us, we set up their foreign trade zone, and they realized a $1.2 million savings by inverting the duty, by bringing in the components, making them into finished connectors in the FTZ, and withdrawing them from the zone as finished connectors duty-free. So there's an example, $1.2 million. And there's other examples. One FTZ, they had merchandise processing fee savings by going to weekly entry in an FTZ of over $600,000 a year. Wow. So these are some numbers that if you're running a company, they're not insignificant.
Now, if I do this, I'm going to make sure that I want you to be involved. I don't want you to set me up with this and then you go away. We've got the manpower to administrate these FTZs as well.
100%. From setting up an FTZ project from scratch, working with the grantees, working with you through go live, and even doing FTZ administration. We have the resources and the knowledge and expertise to assist you at Brown-Miller Consulting. And the other thing that's really important is that if you already have an FTZ, and maybe, you lost a key person, or, you're struggling with your current setup, talk to us, because we can come in to establish zones and help out with, streamlining process, doing audits and assessments, and even fixing problems that may have occurred through disclosures.
Cool. So we got about a minute and a half left. I like to keep these to about 15 minutes. Now, we're going to be able to, ladies and gents, tap into this math brain. So once we get this launched out there, go on a YouTube channel. If there's anything that you want us to cover, I think Robert would be happy to sit down and have a chat, give you some more information on that. And I'm looking forward to working with you, Robert. This man understands marketing too. So that to me, in the grand scheme of things, plays an important role, what we do. But welcome to the team, our new VP of Brown-Miller Consulting Group, Robert Stein.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.